There you go. Okay.
Did you just turn on the recording, Trixie? Okay,
Yeah.
if we just turned on the recording, for the sake of the recording, I'm going to say it is June 17th, 2025, and this is the Lyn and Lori webinar for June. And we're just doing we just do a Q&A every month, and that's what this is. And Lyn has been talking about a program he developed called the Tachyoscope, where you can go on the Tachyoscope and you can uh, use it to increase your powers of observation and your abilities to describe things by having a photo flash before you, and you can control how long the photo stays up. So if you get it down to 1/60th of a second, is that what you said, Lynn?
Yeah, you can get it down to that.
And
Um, okay, and I have a Mac version too. I'll put
I
them both into the chat room.
thank you.
You
That's
can download them. That way I won't have to transfer it to you and all that.
yeah. I don't know if we do we have a chat room on. I don't think there's a chat on the webinar. Unfortunately, there's no chat.
Yeah, I can put it into the chat window. Trixie can download it.
Oh, okay. But where's the chat window? I see a raise hand and a Q&A, but
Uh,
there's no actual chat window.
Put your cursor down to the bottom of the screen and a whole series of things will come up. And one of them is chat.
Oh, mine maybe because I'm on a Mac, it's not. It doesn't.
Oh,
Participants, raise hand, share.
get a real computer.
Q&A, show captions. I'm used to this type of treatment, you guys. I'm just used to my insults to the Apple company. But I'm just but I don't have it. I have AI companion transcript, polls and quizzes, whiteboards, apps, and reset to default, but there's no chat on mine for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, and the chat room won't let me put anything in.
That's what I mean. There's yeah, I don't think there's a chat capacity. That
Okay. Yeah, so I'll send these to you, and I have a Mac version too that I think John Millard wrote.
That's great. Okay, cool. I remembered that's why I asked you if it would work on any kind of computer, because at the time you were making that, you and I
Mhm.
were talking, and you said,
Yeah.
I'm getting one for a Mac as well. So I was like, let's do Mac. I want to do a Mac one. I don't know how many questions you already answered, but thank you, Maria McKinnon, for saying right on time, because I do have a problem with time management, definitely, and I apologize for being late. Anyway, so I am, and then we had John Johnson, and I think you already answered this one, Lynn. Do you develop ideograms for every CRV session? Did you answer that before I got here?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I figured you had. Okay. And then
We can answer it again because this is recorded or whatever.
that's true. And I could just say that no, we don't develop ideograms for every single one. We develop a set of ideograms to begin with, and we practice those regularly, and then they become very dependable as you go from session to session to session. That's it.
And the purpose of practice is uh, you notice when you do your ideograms, when you first start off as a remote viewer, that you don't tend to get a feeling component. What happens is, as you practice the ideograms, it's like wax on, wipe off, and all that. And one day you start getting the feel of the ideogram, not the paper. And it trains your mind to give you a specific shape and feel for a specific gestalt at the target. And once it does that, once you train it to where it is mastering those beginning eight, your own subconscious will start giving you new ideograms. You don't have to make up the new ones.
Yeah, that's really true, and it will expand your vocabulary. Your ideogram vocabulary will expand.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Um, Karen asked, thank you for hosting these. How do you handle noisy signal or overlay?
How do you handle it?
Karen, really part of it comes from experience, in my opinion. It's really interesting that you asked that question because right now, amid my more advanced students, one of my students was accidentally polluted on an actual project that she's working on. And she was told the location of the place that she was viewing. It was a mistake that was made by a new monitor who didn't know any better. And so it really threw her off, and she was like, how do I handle this? Now I'm so front loaded. And I said, this is wonderful that this happened to you. Nothing happens by accident. So the fact that this happened to you means the universe knows you're ready for this kind of experience, because it happens all the time to experienced viewers. It's part of the path that you're on of progress as a viewer, where you do get polluted frequently. And when you get polluted, that's when you have to learn to overcome too much
Yeah.
too much information, where you know too much. And in the beginning, as a new viewer, a lot of times when that happens, you feel like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? I can't view it. I can't view it because I know. But the great thing is you go for the unknown. Excuse me. And she asked, well, how do I go for the unknown? And I said, in the beginning, the first time you do this, when you're really polluted, it's going to feel like chewing on glass. And you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, how do I overcome this? I've got a million stray cats in my mind now. I've got all kinds of assumptions I'm making. And that's good for you. It makes you a tough, resilient viewer. And so you have to overcome that. And what you do, the bottom line is, the world will not end if you build a huge castle. And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay if you just have a huge imagination and you make up a bunch of stuff and it turns out that none of it's right, for example. That's okay. You're getting that experience of having too much pollution, and the next time you have too much pollution, you're going to handle it better, and the next time you'll handle it even better, and the next time you'll handle it even better. So all of these are really great questions, because ultimately it all comes from experience, and you're going to have a lot of stuff coming in that's nonsense or your imagination or whatever, and you learn to deal with it because it's just part of the whole path of progress that you're on.
I threw that over to you because I have like 20 different ways to handle the pollution and the noise and all that. And when one didn't work, I use the other. And sometimes you take a break. Sometimes you just go ahead and you're building a castle in your mind. I don't recommend this for beginning viewers, but once you get enough experience, what you're going to do is you're going to build that castle in your mind. You're going to be describing that castle, and without you knowing it, you're describing what you think the target is. What you're actually describing, your subconscious is giving you descriptors of the actual target. And so you're completely off target, and yet your descriptors are still describing the target. And sometimes you just have to take a break. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And yeah, sometimes you take a break. Sometimes I do. I remember you telling me one time, Lynn. One time I was a new student. I was really struggling, and I was like, I keep having all these stray cats. I can't get them out of my head. And if you have a certain one, like you think the target is, let's say, a ship. You think the target's a ship on the ocean, and no matter what you do, you can't get the ship out of your head. Lynn said, just grab a piece of paper and write down, the target is a ship, on big letters.
Yeah.
Kind of like just scratching that itch, and that's one way of dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And describe this target is a ship. Describe the ship. And you give descriptors and descriptors and descriptors, and all of a sudden one comes in and you say, well, then it can't be a ship. Then you write across the page, the target is not a ship, and then you go back to viewing. Yeah, there are dozens of ways to overcome the pollution and the noise and all that. And as you get through the course, your teacher will show this to you. Okay.
Really true. And there's one thing that some of my more advanced students do that has been actually working really well, because your subconscious knows what the target is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you trust your subconscious, sometimes what you can do is you think the target is a ship. In what way is this ship I have in my head like the target? And you just write down the descriptors that come, and then you say, in what ways is this ship that I have in my mind not like the target? And believe it or not, you'll come up with things that make you say, oh, it can't be a ship because it's not like the target in these various ways. And that has been a great tool that a lot of my students are like, oh my God, that helped me so much. So I hope that helps you, with,
Yeah.
uh, then someone just said, thank you, Lynn, for your many years of sharing your knowledge. I'm watching every video and podcast that you've participated in over the years. Well, that'll take the rest of her life. And and am learning so much from you. Thank you.
Take a lot of no days, right?
Thank you for waking me up. She says, thank you for waking me up. Or he or she, whoever it is. That's great. Um, and then let's see here. Then we've got, hi, Lynn and Lori. So cool to hear you both. I know you're both CRV teachers and really respect the structure, but I was wondering, is there anything in CRV that you personally don't enjoy or that you find limiting? Do you ever prefer using a different technique during the session or as part of the session, or have you even developed one of your own? Thanks so much for sharing.
Oh, listen, in the military unit even, we tried all these great and wonderful ideas that were not with the English one structure, and they felt like they worked. They made us feel good and all this, and the information we got was just garbage. Uh, no, I have learned the value of sticking to the English one structure. It will carry you through. Nothing else will. And the other ideas, a lot of students get mad at me because they'll come and they'll say, "Hey, I thought of a brand new idea and it's great and it's logical. It sounds good and all that. We've already tried it and found out it didn't work." And so I try not to shoot down their idea, but I try to tell them, here's what we found out as to why it didn't work. And no, I have learned the Angus one CRV structure. Uh, I'm sorry, but it's the best thing out there. It really is.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that I can say is there at the beginning, there were definitely parts I didn't like. There were definitely parts that I thought, oh, this part is not my favorite. But over the years, as I really learned what each part does for me as a viewer
Yeah,
and what each part will do for you. I think if you stick with it, you can consider the whole CRV structure as a tool in your psychic toolbox. Like
yeah,
maybe you read tarot, or maybe you use psychometry, or maybe you read crystal balls. No matter what other techniques you have, those are all tools in your toolbox. CRV
hmm,
is a tool in the toolbox, but I feel like the great thing about CRV is that when you get into the advanced levels, it's the basket that holds all the techniques. You can
it is. Yeah,
incorporate six tools in the phase six structure, and eventually, it's kind of like a song. Have you ever heard a song for the first time and you're like, I don't like that song so much.
mhm,
And then it keeps playing on the radio until eventually you start liking it. That's kind of, I
yeah,
think, about the ways of CRV. But I do have to address the question of limitations because I do have students who write me and say, do you find any parts of CRV limiting? Because they're worried that the structure is going to limit their psychic ability. And no, I don't. I feel like,
mhm,
okay, before I started CRV, I had natural psychic ability that was always springing up, in all kinds of ways. And I find that if there's something that I don't feel that CRV is the best way to handle, I have another tool I can use, a different
yeah,
that will answer that or that will take care of that gap or whatever you want to call it. But in no way is it limiting. It's no more limiting than a Phillips head screwdriver would be limiting. No, a Phillips head screwdriver is for a certain thing that only a Phillips head screwdriver can handle. And so therefore, I don't feel like it's limiting. It just has its own purpose.
yeah. Think of along the tool analogy. Think of scrying or something like that as a screwdriver. Uh, CRV is a hammer. Uh, you know, uh, something else is some other method as a saw and all that. Uh, Sometimes don't try to saw with a hammer. Don't try to hammer with a screwdriver. Okay, it's not good. And so the main thing is you have the different methodologies that are each good for their own thing. Don't mix them,
Mhm.
okay? People come into CRV and they try to mix Reiki in with CRV. It doesn't work, okay? CRV has its own thing, Reiki has its own thing, and you keep each one of them pure. You try to mix CRV in with Reiki, the Reiki stops being as good, okay? Just keep them pure. Yeah.
Oh, and here's a note from TW Fenley. Hi, Teresa. It's great to see you. She is saying that your tachyoscope is posted on the appliedprecog.com, and she put the link in the Q&A. So if all of you are able to
Oh, good.
Q&A, it's right there. It's at https://www.appliedprecog.com// dash precognition. So you can
Is,
find it there. That's really great.
is that your website?
No, that's Marty's website.
Marty's, I thought it was. Yeah, okay. And he's
So
got it for ARV. Yeah.
Teresa
Um,
Fenley, who
I don't know if he has the Mac version or there it is, Stethoscope. Um, uh, Idiogram program, how to video. Okay. How to donate to John. All right.
who's John?
Um,
Who's John?
yeah.
I don't know who John is.
Yeah.
How to
Uh,
donate to John. Uh, anyway, so yeah, you could check it out though. Make sure it's good, Lynn, before. But
okay.
anyhow, so somebody asked, what's your opinion of or experience with the brainwave headband device for remote viewing? I'm not familiar with that brainwave headband device.
Sounds like a gimmick to me.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
might use that if you can just if what you need's right up in here. You know, that's
Yeah. My
what
son one time said, uh, Dad, you've got all these things, uh, tell me how to get to be a good remote viewer fast and easy. I said, well, the best way to get to a good remote viewer, practice, practice, practice. Nothing else beats it.
Dad, that's not fast and easy.
Well, but we tried the Hemisync, we tried everything else, and we found out that just doing the remote viewing without any talismans or aids or anything like that is when it works best and when it works easiest.
And Debbie Ballard asked us, does the tachyscope develop situational awareness? Do you feel like it helps with situational awareness?
Um, Developing your awareness will affect your situation. uh, uh,
The also the ambiance
then I
exercise.
would say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so too. And I think the ambiance exercise also really helps a lot. The ambiance does. And okay, and then let's see. I'm just getting through the ones we've already answered here. How do you interpret the collective unconscious in the context of remote viewing? One thing,
First of all, I don't believe in the collective unconscious. I believe in the collective consciousness. The collective mind is very conscious. You may not be aware of it, but that doesn't mean that it's unconscious. Okay. I know Freud and Jung and all that use the unconscious as a noun. That's okay. Call it whatever you want. But as an adjective, it's not unconscious at all. Okay. And yeah, how does your subconscious, we don't call it the unconscious either. We call it the subconsciousness. How does your subconscious access the world? Probably through the collective consciousness.
that's so true. And I also think one of the things that I've noticed from from doing so many, club PRV meetings and things with going over so many sessions, because every month I go over all these sessions that students have sent
Oh,
in,
yeah.
for their things. And I'm sure you've found this too, Lynn. We find amazing overlap a lot of times, where that really prove we are connected. For example, let's say that everybody in, the target who what is whatever, but everybody in the whole class had a stray cat of a alligator, for example. And like everybody saw an alligator, and there's no alligator at the target, but every single person,
Mm.
had a stray cat of an alligator. And you're like, okay, they got to be connected. We're all connected for these kinds of things to happen, for sure. And I'm sure you've
Oh, yeah.
unit too, where you had an analytic overlay or I think I'm what is it called when when you're viewing someone else's session? What do we call that, Lynn? Do you remember?
Oh, trying to think of it right now.
I,
I wake up about 3 in the morning and say, "Oh, I remember."
yeah, I know. I'm suddenly having a mental block,
Yeah.
as we call them, brain farts, right? I'm having a brain fart. Anyway, let's see. I was able to figure out why abductees and others that have experienced difficulties with electronics, it lends itself to a deeper question. I'm keeping the information to myself for a while. Okay, that's great. And then let's move on to the next one. Uh, Joel Mitchell.
By the way, anonymous person, that didn't help anybody. And glad you figured it out, but keeping it to yourself didn't help anybody else. Anyway,
And Joel says, throughout human history, might people have been remote viewing by other names? Oh, for sure.
oh yeah,
Because remote viewing is such a basket term.
yeah.
Remote viewing includes every type of scrying, every type of psychic phenomena that's ever occurred since human.
It's the new age term for psychic. Yeah,
Exactly. So remote viewing kind of encompasses all things. Controlled remote viewing is a different thing. Extended remote viewing is a different thing. Uh, Associative remote viewing is a different thing. But
yeah.
yeah, sure. And then we have, um, okay, this looks like a really good question. Paco Libre says, question about the flashes. I often get a flash when I'm beginning to settle in, but these feel like they are too close and out of focus to make sense of them. The real signal seems to be at a further distance and has no color to it, just wireframe outlines. Should I just ignore the initial flash? How can I bring it into focus?
Anything you get goes on that paper. Okay.
And often the initial flash happens when we're writing down the POCA, the preview of coming attractor.
Yeah,
So
write it down.
yeah, and so a lot of times, Paco, in the CRV search structure, we have the admin section, and that initial flash often appears right when we're writing things in the admin section, and we write a POCA, which is actually kind of the little flash that comes, So you have a
Yeah,
flash, for example, of a balloon or something, and you write POCA balloon, and you proceed to set it aside because we do set those visuals aside. But oftentimes, let's say sometimes I'll see something, let's say I see a red balloon, a big bright red balloon, and then it turns out that the prominent color at the target is red. And it's the
yeah,
exact shade of red that I saw on the balloon. It's not trying to tell me that the target is a balloon. It's trying to tell me the target
right.
has this color of red at it. So a lot of times that can also be really helpful if you can extrapolate certain descriptors from whatever that visual is.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's one. We get this question a lot. I think every single time we get together, with the difference between astral projection and regular remote viewing. Astral projection, in my mind, is not remote viewing. There is no such thing as astral projection remote
Um,
viewing. Well, I can't say there's no such thing because Joe McMonagle often says that he remote views when he's astral projecting. But astral projection and remote viewing are two separate things. You can do them at the same time, but they're not, there's no astral projection remote viewing in my mind. But Lynn, once you gave a great explanation of there's pros and cons to everything, and the cons to trying to remote view while you're astral projecting are that you tend to see everything with the subconscious mind when you're in an astral form.
mhm.
And Lynn, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, um, in like the remote viewing, you try to astral project to the target, Uh, just like she was talking about the red balloon, your subconscious sees things. It doesn't use nouns, it uses descriptors. And when it conveys something to you, it'll almost always use an analogy or an example or a memory you've got of something. And so you astral project and you're at a site and there's a puppy on the ground. Okay. What may be on the ground is a human child, but it's out there, it's lost, suffering, or something like that. And your conscious mind didn't want to see the human child, and so it'll see a helpless puppy. And so your conscious mind says, well, that's not what I'm looking for, and you go on. And and you've got to learn how your subconscious talks to you and how it uses symbology and examples and memories and all that. And once you do that, then you'll see why we say, you can mix astral projection with CRV, but it's best if you don't. Now, Ingo, there is a state in controlled remote viewing. By the way, controlled remote viewing does not mean that you're controlled. It means that you are in control of the remote viewing. That's what the control stands for. In controlled remote viewing, there's a situation called bilocation or perfect site integration. And Ingo discouraged that because if that happens, your mind goes to the site, you have all these experiences, and you come back, and now then somebody says, give me everything that happened on this piece of paper. You're going to write a summary. And summaries don't do it when you need details, okay? Because you're not going to give details. And so Ingo would have the monitors watch to see if a person was getting into the bilocation or perfect site integration and stop them and say, no, don't go visit the site and come back and give me a summary. Right now, give me details about the site. And you would still have the experience, but you would give detail by detail by detail as you view. And that way, instead of a one paragraph summary, you'd have 20 pages of detailed information. And so that's why Ingo always said, do not let someone have an out of body experience or something like that while they're remote viewing, because then all you get's a one paragraph summary.
That's very good. Deborah asked, in my current PRV Target B session, so she's one of my students and she's working on, right now in our advanced classes, we're doing uh, projects, like remote viewing projects. And she said, in my Target B session, I had the same issue with multiple signal lines, like seeing, feeling all the lines in a telephone exchange. I didn't understand why this would happen. I ended up sketching it and sketching me, zooming in and selecting one signal line. It felt odd. Does this happen? Obviously, it does happen because it happened to you, Deborah. Um,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
but that's an interesting thing.
B session.
Multiple signal lines.
Okay.
That's a good question. Um, I don't know. I think part of that for me, and Lynn, you can tell me if I'm off base on this one, but I feel like sometimes when you're viewing, you can, especially if you're doing something that's pretty deep and pretty advanced and pretty interesting,
Yeah.
you do start getting information that just feels like it's coming in from every direction and it can be overwhelming. And I feel like, in a way, the discipline comes in doing exactly what you're describing here, Deborah, where you go in and you choose one signal line and say, okay, I'm going to focus on this part right now.
Yeah. And there have been times I when I kind of felt I was viewing two targets at once, two signal lines, let's say, when actually what I was viewing was the same target from two different people's perspective who were at the target.
Mm.
And listen, the police will tell you two eyewitnesses never agree, right? Yeah. So it just goes back to the old rule. Hey, I don't care how many signal lines it is or how many targets you're viewing. If you get it in your mind, put it on the paper.
Write it down, write it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know that sometimes what you write now, without knowing what the target is or without having more information, sometimes it feels like you're viewing more than one signal line, but what might actually be happening is you might be viewing different aspects of the target.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I was doing a target one time and I thought, oh my God, I must be completely off. This was a paid project. And I was like, oh, I'm sure I'm totally off because I was getting very distinctive things. Like one thing I would describe and then I'd go back into session and it was totally different. And what it
Yeah.
turned out was that the target was a kidnapped woman. And when I viewed her here, she was in a car with a bunch of guys. And then I viewed a different, totally different location because then they went there. And when I started viewing, they were in a totally different location. And I
Yeah.
kept thinking, gosh, I must be so off target. But in reality, I was actually on target. So you don't always
Yeah.
know until it ain't over till the fat lady sings you. You don't always know until you get to actually see what you were viewing, get the
Yeah.
feedback.
And there's the thing called temporal attractors too. Let's say you're tasked with viewing New York City on um, a certain date that's close to the Twin Towers attack. Okay. You will be viewing your target, but jumping back and forth because there's that time attractor to a more exciting event at the same place. And so, like she said, you may be viewing the same target at two different times and jumping back and forth in time, but you're still viewing the same target. Uh, so, uh, and you don't know as a viewer. And so, whatever you get, write it down. You finish your session, you don't know. Hey, you hand it over to an analyst or to somebody who has the feedback. Their problem now, not yours. Okay. You're muted, Larry.
Sorry. Andy asked, has there been experiments to see how RV works during a half asleep, half awake, hazy state if woken suddenly in the middle of the night? I'm curious if it might be a conducive state similar to ERV when in that hazy, slightly asleep brain state. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if there.
ERV is done in a hypnagogic state when it's done the way the military did. The uh, things that people are teaching out there for now for ERV is more guided visualization than the regular ERV. Uh, but I don't know of anybody who's teaching the military ERV. Uh,
Try it. Since Jim and I are certified hypnotherapists, when we teach an in-person ERV, or even when we do the online version, we do try to do it with using the military way, the way that you've described it to me, and
Good.
bring people
Yeah,
answer a question and then helping them get down to a much lower state,
yeah,
and then through 40 levels of consciousness and
yeah,
that sort of thing. That because the other way, like you said, is mostly just a summary.
yeah,
The way that Dave Morehouse teaches it, for example, lie down, close your eyes, cover it up,
yeah,
and then tell me what you got 30 minutes later.
yeah. Yeah, if you don't have a monitor with you all the way through the entire session and an ERV trained monitor, you're not doing the real ERV. Uh, it's the guided visualization that you do is good. I'm not shooting that down, but it's not the ERV. Yeah.
And it can be hard sometimes, depending on the circumstances, to get into that state.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that there's been any actual official research done on that, Andy. That not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't just because I'm not aware of it doesn't mean it hasn't been done. But
Yeah.
I'm not aware aware of any official data, but one person it might be good to check with would be Deborah Katz, because she's so into research, and they've done a lot of experimentation. So I don't know if they've checked that half a week, half awake, half asleep state.
Yeah.
I know that in the work that Jim and I have done, though, we've gotten some pretty amazing information in that state, pretty accurate information, but it usually
Yeah, you can.
happens sometimes when you're doing a CRV session and you've been doing, maybe it's late at night and you're working on it, and then suddenly you just kind of slip into that state, that
Hmm.
half awake state, and then all of a sudden you're getting, some pretty good stuff. I've gotten some really clear, outstanding, accurate names, which isn't something that normally you get in a good CRV state. Uh,
Yeah,
but it is possible with AE.
yeah. And ideally, the pure CRV, you do it in a wide awake state anyway. No altered states. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And let's see, then there's, how would we, I'm not sure, the target of US television, how would we keep track of idioms and the stars? I would either about doing ERV, we describe all the descriptions that come in my mind. I think we're missing some of that one. I don't know that I can answer that one. So that we're going to skip down to, let's see, why do I always have the same ideogram for almost all my sessions? How do I correct this? Thank you.
Practice, practice, practice. There until you get the subconscious trained to give you a separate ideogram and a dependable one. Uh, it's like a kid learning to write. Okay. Uh, and I'm sorry, but it's practice, practice, practice. It really is.
Yeah, and also the Lynn, I don't know if you remember this, but from my very first basic class, you were teaching, and you said that you went through a stage in your ideogram development, and people do go through stages as you're developing your ideograms.
Um,
Ideograms go through different stages as you progress. And you mentioned that you went through a stage in which all your ideograms looked the same and you could only distinguish them through the feeling component.
mhm.
That's something that you, Kristen, it's a stage you're going through. If you
Yeah,
continue to practice, you'll come out of that stage and your ideograms
yeah.
will transform again. Ideograms are constantly morphing, so you'll find that you'll come out of that stage. For right now, though, see if you can feel the ideograms when they look the same. And instead of judging them
Mhm.
by the way they look, judge them by the way they feel when you touch them, and see if that helps. Then we have Tenacity Trish. That's a great name, Tenacity Trish. Integration for medication people. One of the questions I would like to ask him again, invited ask up. I'm sorry, goodness. I'm sorry, but somehow you guys, when you put your question in there, make sure that it's coherent, because it's hard to understand if it's incoherent. Okay.
I think that out is AI's version of I would.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I would like, so she wants to ask you a question. If RV repairs department or home, I can go in and decide. I have a few times, but that's not true. Okay, I'm not sure what that one is. I think we should.
Ask a question if I can. RV repairs department.
Okay, we're gonna skip
Oh,
that one. They have to be
yeah,
clearer.
don't make up your own terminology, okay?
Okay. Sure Wayne says, I'm a brand new viewer and I can get pages upon pages of phase two. Whenever I get an AI, I don't feel it. I don't know where the target is in relation to me. At this point, should I go back to phase two or go straight sketching and trust that I will get some sort of sketch? Well, the target is an AI isn't always like, where is the target in relation to me, Sherwayne? Sometimes an AI is just a really strong emotion about the target, like you suddenly have a feeling about it and you feel like you're interacting with it in some way, but it's not always a spatial relationship. An AI is not always a spatial
Yeah.
relationship. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Lynn.
Um, you're right, it's not always a spatial relationship, but there's a difference between how the target makes you feel and you feel you're at the target. Okay. It may be a scary target. Oh, this target scares me. But then also oh, there's something right here that scares me. When the AI happens, it's when you are joining with the target. And so that's usually a spatial component, okay? But sometimes it's, it's not, well, a stage 2 impression is, oh, this target scares me, okay? AI could be, oh, that scares me. I mean, you're right there with it. And that join in with the target, that's where the AI is. 9 times out of 10, it'll have a spatial component to it, but not always.
Martin asked, is it a problem that some of the basic ideograms are nouns, and almost all ideograms are nouns, actually? I mean, like water, land, whatever. I mean, technically they're nouns. Water is a noun. Land is a noun. So you can explain the difference, Lynn, and what in answering that question.
I went into great depth on this. I saved it out. I can find it. Oh, that's not it. Okay, I'll summarize for you. The idiogram stands for gestalt. Now, the name of the idiogram can often be a noun,
Like
but
water.
that's not what a gestalt is. Let's say you get the gestalt of water, okay? The gestalt is not a noun and it's not a descriptor, okay? It's a basic aspect of something, which is what psychiatrists and psychologists and philosophers call not an artifact. Oh, I forget the name. Anyway, they call it an archetype, okay? And an archetype of something is not something itself, it's what's behind it, what it stems from and all that. So let's say you get water, okay? That doesn't mean you've got water at the site. But all the aspects that water has, something at the site has those aspects. And so you get water. And so you go into stage 2 and you start describing the water. Well, it's black, it's thick, it's very oily, it smells like I'm working on a car and all that. And what you find out is you got the water idiogram for oil or vinegar or something like that, but they are all liquidy. And you get land, okay? But your target is a bunch of actors on a stage. You go to describe the land and you wind up saying, well, this is a bunch of wooden boards, or this is board-like and wooden and not land at all. And yet it's what the actors are standing on. It is their land during the play. And so a gestalt is not a noun. It's not a descriptor. It's a basic aspect that gives the most basic definition of what something is. Okay. And so you can have molten lead and you may get a watery aspect on it. You may get the water idiogram because it's being poured out of the crucible into a mold. And I got the water idiogram one time for a flock of sheep that was going over a hillside. It was a practice target. And there was this flock of sheep just flowing over this hillside. And I got the water idiogram for that motion. Okay. It was a liquid motion. Yeah.
That is great. That's a good one.
Yeah. And so don't think of the gestalts as nouns or as descriptors of the target. It's just that basic understanding that at the most basic level sort of defines the essence of what they are. Is anybody confused now?
I think that's great. I love that explanation. Um, Joel said, I've heard a few stories of a strong voice speaking to you in session or in an emergency situation, like a P7, I think, Lynn. Do you think it's your own subconscious or is it a third party player or other? That is a great question. And do you want to take a stab at it?
I think it's my own subconscious probably getting information, maybe from a third party player or some spiritual being or whatever, and using its voice or using an imagined voice that you know uh, if it's a urgent command, it may use my drill sergeant's voice. If it's not, it may use a feminine voice or whatever. But I think what comes to my conscious comes from my subconscious. Now, it may be conveying from I'm sure it's conveying it from somewhere else. Yeah.
Very good. There's a couple of people who've asked about displacement, and I have a really great blog on displacement. There's also a really good blog on the difference between astral projection and CRV. So if you go to intuitivespecialist.com and go to the blogs, you can just fan through them and you'll see there's one on displacement. It's called, I can't remember what the displacement, I think it's called Six Lessons to Ease Displacement or something like that. But there's displacement and there's also a blog on the difference between astral projection. And they're very thorough and they would give you a much more thorough answer than we could answer here in this very
Yeah.
short little Q&A. So if you guys are interested in talking about displacement,
Yeah.
just take a look at that blog.
And Constance right after that says displacement, as though I'm reading that as though displacement. What are you talking about?
Well,
Define
Constance knows,
displacement. Yeah.
she's been a student of mine forever and she knows what displacement is. Maybe they're asking,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
they're answering a question and as
Oh, okay.
could it be displacement? Whatever it was we were talking about when they typed that in there is what I think, because that was 30 minutes ago. So maybe we were talking about something else.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Could be displacement. But if anybody does have questions about displacement, you can find it in the blog. Um, and then let's see, we answered this one. Um, and then if I'm wrong about that, guys, just write it again. And then Pat Rick says, I have many dreams while remote viewing because I usually do it so late. Last night, the mini dream was a target, a car that was going to hit me in the dream, which caused me to wake up. Does this happen often? I don't know. I guess it depends on the person, Rick, Pat.
Yeah.
I think that just depends on the person. Who knows? Anyway, so it can happen. I've had it happen to me a few times, but usually it's my monitor who says, can you tell me what's going on? Would you like to write that down? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Um, and then Shay asked, do we close our eyes at any moment or keep them open the whole time? And is it good to meditate before a session? I always tell my students, keep your eyes open. I think that all that visual information that you're getting when your eyes are open are really great to keep the conscious mind busy so the subconscious can come through. So a lot of times if I'm teaching a class and the student is going, I'm blah, 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 don't close your eyes because that's when the imagination really kicks in. You're closing your
Yeah.
eyes and all these visuals are going to pop in. So keep during controlled remote viewing, not ERV, but controlled remote viewing, we usually insist that viewers keep their eyes open.
Yeah.
And then we have David Flowers. Hi, David. He says, do you think the subconscious mind can use a form of telepathic messages to talk to the conscious mind, but all we hear is an inner knowing or an idea that we get? Could it be that our future self is communicating to us? I've experienced time and space lose their meaning while astral projecting. Time and space definitely lose their meaning when you're astral projecting, that's for sure. But astral projecting, of course, is a totally separate thing from controlled remote viewing. So let's make sure to keep those two things separate. As far as the subconscious, I mean, I think your guess is as good as any of our guesses. But as far as telepathic messages, Lynn, how would you address that?
Yeah, we know about telepathic overlay. Okay. That a good strong viewer is on or off target. The other weaker viewers around them will tend to pick up what that viewer is getting, and they'll be either wrong or right simply because they have that one strong viewer in there. But back to the thing about where does the information come from? To me, I think it comes, I have trained to get the conscious mind, subconscious mind, give impressions through the body to the conscious mind. And so where the subconscious gets that information may well be from my future self.
Mhm.
In fact, that study I did on influencing your own past, uh, yeah, uh, there are, that is a good way to use that phenomenon. Uh, you you see that something turns out or right or wrong. Hey, sit down, do a session, accessing your past self, saying, do or don't do this, you know. Um, and it works. It helps you make decisions better.
That's very good. And then here's one. It's uh, this is a personal question. Well, Luciana says, I feel like RV has opened up a whole new way for me to be part with topics I've always been passionate about, like archaeology, something I never thought I'd get to explore in this lifetime. Yeah, CRV is great for archaeology. Is a more personal question. I'm really curious. Have there been any targets that deeply fascinated you? And have you ever experienced bilocation while viewing those places? Lynn, we have to pass this question to you because of all the many years of experience that you've had viewing. I'd love to hear your answer to this one as well.
Okay. Part of topics I've always been passionate about archaeology, something I never, okay. Uh, have there been any targets deeply fascinated you? Listen, when you pick up remote viewing, if you want to become a good remote viewer, you practice, practice, practice. If you want to become a world-class remote viewer, you practice, 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 and get curious about every single thing you get. Okay. And yeah, the curiosity will get you to a target. And yeah, the bilocation, by English definition, is where you're at the target mentally and also at your desk mentally writing things down. And that he kind of discourages. The perfect site integration where you're totally at the target. I mean, you get to the target, you can't tell you're not there. That's what he discourages strongly. But yeah, some of these targets can get so interesting to you that you just really get sucked into them. And I've had many of those experiences. Like I say, I've never physically walked on Mars, but listen, I have had the actual experience of actually walking on Mars, and and I got feedback because when I came back, I was remembering enough that I could sketch what I saw, and and we were at a location one time which had all of this accurate data on Mars, and found the place, and I had drawn the place where I was standing and drawn it accurately. I was there, you know. Um, so yeah, you get some of these targets that are so interesting, you get sucked into them. One time, it's a practice target, uh, and I found myself standing on a street corner, and a little mountain village, and I could tell from the altitude, and that it was up high altitude. And across the street, I looked, and there was Swiss Bank, and I saw this man and his son come out and jump into a Volkswagen convertible, a little bug convertible, and I ran across the street, jumped on the back, and rode with them as they drove through the town. And I would pop out long enough to write down a street name as we passed, pop back in and, write things down. And for feedback, we actually got pictures and maps from the tourist bureau of this town, which was the targeted town in the envelope, and found out that I had gotten one street name wrong. The rest of them I'd gotten right in the right order. Even drew a fountain that was over in a park beside it, the railway station, and drew a map of the town. And this wasn't remote viewing, like get an impression and write it down. I was riding on the back of that Volkswagen. I was sitting on the back and just having the time of my life. It was great, beautiful town.
And
I've always wanted to go there.
and that is really the definition right there of perfect site immersion. Site being
It is.
S-I-T-E,
Yeah.
you're at that site, and that's perfect site immersion. And a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Tommy, who was
McNear.
here, Ingo's first student, and he said, well, Ingo was teaching him that Ingo defined perfect site immersion as something when you would be there so completely you'd stop writing, which is why he discouraged it
Yeah.
because he was getting paid for these to teach these guys something where they could report, and if they stopped
Yeah.
reporting, it defeated the purpose.
Mhm.
But then he said though that Ingo's definition of bilocation, which you just described perfectly, that Ingo actually encouraged that as long as the viewer kept writing because they
That's right. Yeah.
really
Mhm.
great information while part of them was really immersed in the target and the other part was
Yeah.
sitting there writing everything down. And that's where it gets tricky. And that's where Mel Riley's thing of, he's like, Lori, you can't do that without a good monitor. You have to have a good
Oh,
monitor.
yeah. Absolutely.
True. I think having a good monitor keeps you safe, keeps you writing when your mind wants to just when you just kind of want to fold up and go to sleep or just immerse yourself so much in the target that you stop writing. And so a good monitor is
Oh,
there to keep you from doing that.
listen, if you want to learn a lot about remote viewing, learn to be a monitor. We can train 10 good viewers in the time it takes to train one good monitor. Lori's book, Monitoring, is primo. Get that book. Yeah. You'll learn a lot about remote viewing. Yeah.
And it is, and Jim contributed a lot to that book because he has monitored me so much and actually he's even been flown places to monitor other viewers, and so he's a really great monitor, and I've learned a lot from Jim about
Yeah.
monitoring. He's a great monitor because he's very quiet and observant. Talkative monitors don't always make the best monitors.
Mm.
People who want to butt in too much. Um, Now, Jane asked a question that I think we should bring up because it'll clarify things a lot of people have a misconception about. She said, I
Mhm.
saw mountains in my ideogram. I ignored it and I didn't write it down. Instead, I analyzed the ideogram. Well, the target had mountains in it. What happened there? Do you want to address that one, Lynn, or do you want me to address it?
Well, yeah. Uh, it either wound up as a pictogram instead of an ideogram, or maybe that's your ideogram for mountains.
But what I want to say to Jane is sometimes because she had an experience like that, she'd think, well, maybe I shouldn't have analyzed the Enneagram. Maybe I should have just gone with what I got. Well, number one, when you saw mountains, you could write stray cat mountains, set that aside, because what is our first directive, Jane? Describe, don't identify.
Right.
Mountains, if you do not have an ideogram for mountains and you think, oh, I see mountains there, you should immediately write, stray cat, I see mountains. And
Yeah.
go ahead and analyze your ideogram, etc. And then when you open it up and you see mountains, great. Well, that
Mhm.
confirms that there are mountains there, but your job is to describe, not to
Yeah.
identify that there's there's mountains there. I just want to clarify that because I think a lot of students get really caught up in the beginning of wanting
That's right.
to name
Yeah.
the target. And that's not our goal as remote viewers. Our goal is to
And
describe the target.
this gets really kind of nitpicky on remote viewing. You do the ideogram and you see mountains. Over to the side, stray cat, mountains, or AOL, mountains. But you've done remote viewing long enough that you know that this is your ideogram for mountains. Then you say A, up, down, peak, jagged, and all that. B, mountains.
If you have an ideogram for mountains, then you can declare the mountains are there.
You separate that noun conclusion that you jumped as an AOL, and yet in structure, you say A, up and down, feels rough, B, mountains. Okay.
Very good. And then Zachary says, I'm also wondering, a lot of times I'll see pictures of things when I'm remote viewing. In my mind's eye, is there a difference then of describing like shapes and textures of what you're perceiving? Or how does that actually work, if I may ask? And Zachary, just as a side note, every month I teach a little thing called the Flash Focus class.
Mhm.
July 8th, I'll be teaching a Flash Focus class on visions and visuals. What happens when we have visions in our remote viewing sessions, and what are they, and how do we interpret them, and that sort of thing. So I encourage you to join the Flash Focus class if you can, July 8th at noon. That's a Tuesday also. But anyway, so that was Zachary Temple. Do you want to take a stab at answering his question, Lynn?
July the 8th. Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, uh, many times, uh, many times I've gotten to where I get a visual, I will start describing the important things about the visual, knowing that I'm picking up not what the visual is, but the descriptors I can get from it. However, sometimes uh, it's the visual is strong enough that I will go over to the side and write visual and write a descriptor of what I saw, set it aside, and come back and see which of those things now drop out in the remote viewing. And so a strong visual and a clear visual is almost always an AOL. If you get a visual that's amorphous and fuzzy and all that, that's probably your subconscious mind because it doesn't tend to give you straight sharp visual AOLs. So many times I'll just go over to the side and say, I got a visual, visual, and describe the visual I got, knowing that if somebody who knows what the target is looks at the session I did, they'll understand what it means. I don't have to now, and so I can go back and view.
Very good. And then, do you believe in practice Ingo's mythical stages like stage 10 and beyond?
Oh, yeah. In fact, they're not mythical. Ingo called me one day and said that, see, he only taught the military up through stage 6. And he mentioned stage 7 and 8 to us, but he never taught it. And he called me one day, this was after I was out of the military, and said, if you come to New York for 6 months, I will teach you up through stage 11. My mother was in the process of dying at the time. My wife was just deathly ill. I couldn't go. And by the time that all of that was taken care of, Ingo had passed away. And so I never got it. But I had lengthy discussions with Ingo, and he was telling me that he was in the process before he died of developing stage 18.
Wow, that's pretty intense, stage 18.
Yeah.
Lynn, was viewing self a no-go during your time in the military? I've heard Ed Dames say this was the most interesting target one could ever view. However, I believe Hal Puthoff mentioned that viewers were discouraged from targeting themselves, almost intimidated, but being told that they would be found out if they did under a polygraph and seeing what we really are. That's a fascinating thing.
If you get yourself as your target, uh, be prepared to see yourself as others see you, and as you really are. And you may not like the results. Uh, so there's nothing wrong with viewing yourself unless you target yourself to view yourself. Because then, man, you're totally polluted. Okay. So if you want to view yourself, fine, get a buddy and have them, you know, put 50 targets in an envelope and one of them is you. And at random and out random, when neither you nor that buddy knows when you are coming up, and that's when you can do it without the pollution. But if you target yourself, oh, I'm going to view myself, um, no. Now, viewing your past self or your future self, what you're not going to be doing is viewing yourself. You're going to be viewing your situation and, using yourself as the beacon for a past or a present or a future time. And so like if you want to know what you're doing 10 years from now, fine, view it, but view the situation, don't view yourself. Okay.
Okay, now guys, we've already gone past 17 minutes past
Yeah,
our
that's
time.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's time flies, right? So a lot of you are asking questions that don't have anything to do with CRV. So I'm just eliminating those because we are here to talk about CRV and answer CRV questions. But so if you don't get an answer, it's usually because you're not asking a question regarding CRV. There, if you're asking about stuff we don't do or we don't practice, we can't respond to it because we don't have experience in that. We're experts on CRV. So ask us questions
Yeah.
about CRV and ERV and those other types of remote viewing. And this one got answered, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. And then, and Ian asked about ideogram practice sites. And I just want to say that Ian, right now, as we speak, our programmer is redoing the ideogram practice program on our website. And Lynn, don't you have one on your website as well, an ideogram practice program?
I'm sorry.
Do you have an ideogram practice program on your website?
Yeah, and in fact, that link that was given earlier, I haven't checked out that Idiogram program, but it lists that Idiogram program as being there as well
Okay, so
on Marty's site. Yeah.
Marty's site, but we're not talking about the tachyscope though. We're talking just about ideogram practice. Do you have?
Yeah, the Idiogram practice, it's also listed as being there.
Oh, okay, great. And so if you go to your website, where would they find ideogram practice?
Um, Drop me a line, I'll send it to you. It's a self-standing program. It's not a web-based program. Yeah.
Okay. The one on my website, the part that controlled the speed of the thing
Yeah.
wasn't working, and so it would just go land, water, da, 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 it's too fast to practice with. So I just had a meeting last week with my IT guy, and they're redesigning it the way that it needs to be, and so
Mhm.
it should be up and functioning within about a week, I think.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it is web-based, so any computer can
Mhm.
use it, and you'll be able to see it under I think it'll be under the free stuff section. It'll say ideogram practice. So I hope that helped, Ian. And then we have, oh, and then Helen says, I'm looking forward to seeing you both in Dublin because Helen lives in the
Oh,
UK.
good. Yeah.
And then
Anonymous asked a good question here. Yeah.
Lori teaches that you should get through the initial phases quickly into P4, but is there such a thing as too soon? If I get two perceptions in P2 and then I get an AI right away, should I then move to P3 and P4, or should I stay in P2 and get a few more perceptions there before moving on? Let me answer that my way because it might not agree with your way, Lynn. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But what I found is that once you're more advanced, you don't have to necessarily stick around too long in phase two, because the purpose of phase two, which used to be to remote view when you were a basic student, has now shifted. And the purpose of phase two is now to have the AI. So
Yeah,
once you've had the AI and you've done a little sketching, a lot of times that's a good sign for you to move into phase four, because that's where you're going to do the bulk of your remote viewing. So
right.
that's how I would answer that question, Lynn.
I would answer it the same way with a reminder that CRV is not a stair step. And let's say you get 2 impressions in stage 2 and you jump into stage 4. You can still come back and do stage 3. And in stage 4, you can do more stage 2s. You can drop out of stage 4 and go to stage 6 and then come back to stage 2. And you say, move 10 miles to the north. Oh, back in stage 1, what gestalts are there? And so it's not stair step 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. It's like a toolbox, like Lori was talking about earlier. It's like a toolbox. Each different stage is a tool of its own, and you use it whenever you need it. Excuse me.
Sneeze, sneeze, let it out.
Sorry about that.
That's,
Twice a year, I've never been allergic to anything until I moved here, and twice a year I get allergies. I don't know what it is. Anyway,
this is great. And let's see, then Giwa said, are there any super simple practice targets that consist of just one simple ideogram depiction? In other words, just water, or just flat land, or just mountain, or just a person, etc. Do we have any simple ones that just contain one gestalt, Lynn? That I don't know that they're categorized that way.
you can have somebody generate some by just looking for such pictures on the internet, uh, and uh, you don't want to do it yourself. You have somebody do it for you, but you go to Pixabay, Pixabay, and you will find pictures of a wrench, flat land, a cloud. That's it, just one thing in a picture. And somebody can just download those, print them out, or else put them as a file number in the computer and say, okay, your feedback is file number 83, And so you can do that, yeah. And probably Pixabay.com is the easiest place to get those.
Hmm. What did you say that is? Pix a what?
Pixabay, Pixabay, yeah. And it's all free graphics that you can use for personal reasons, or you can use for commercial reasons or anything. They're all free graphics. And they have thousands and thousands of different graphics. And you can find a lot of one item pictures on Pixabay.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Okay, let's see here. We have just a couple. I think, we're actually doing pretty good on knocking these out, Lynn. Um, uh, and some of these are also just comments. So, so that's helpful because we're zipping through. Um, let's see. A lot of people just saying thank you and this is really helpful and things like that. And then, and then here's someone that says, wait, so Lynn sent messages to his past self, or he changed his own past? Can we hear a specific example from Lynn about how he personally influenced his past? What are the limits of what's possible for this?
Yeah.
And can I just throw in there, Amy? We have a flash focus class on this whole thing that's called Getting in Touch with Your Future Self, and it's all about influencing your past. And also Lynn's book, The Seventh Sense, really talks about this more thoroughly. Probably
Yeah.
and we could address in this short session that we're doing right now. But that would, because otherwise Lynn trying to answer this one would go on for quite a while. It's very complex. So
Just a caution, you can't change the past. However, you can influence it so that uh, so that you have hindsight in your decisions back then, and that will change everything up to your present time and the future. Yeah.
John, I just want to say it's totally possible to do ARV by yourself. There's definitely ways that can be done for sure. And then Karen says, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage having aphantasia, the inability to voluntarily visualize mental images. Do you know of any remote viewers with this condition? A ton of remote viewers have that condition. I know a lot of people that have aphantasia, and we get asked that question quite a bit, Karen, and you can still very much describe even if you can't visualize. You know it may even be an advantage. I don't know because I don't have an aphantasia, but I do know that some people get really thrown off when they're constantly seeing visuals and visions. So just try it and let us know how it goes for you, because it definitely shouldn't be an absolute limitation. I don't think. Did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Lynn, about aphantasia?
No, I was reading this other comment.
What about can remote viewing happen during dream state at night? Which one?
Yeah, I
Uh,
had dreams even before Trump was president.
Dreams in the 80s and before Trump became president.
Does that mean nightmares?
I know this differs the subject, I think. I had a dream seeing myself that wasn't good, in which I had become my nutritional. Okay, not sure what that was, but okay, that's good. And then we have thanks for an enlightening webinar. Thanks, take care. Okay, so a lot of people are dropping off. We can go ahead. I think we can go ahead and end it here. Yeah, we really did better, I think, on this one than any other one that we've ever done as far as getting all the questions answered. So I think this is a good time to stop, guys. Thank you so much for being part of this. When is our next Lyn and Lori webinar? I believe it is, let's take a look real quick, in July.
Ouch. Yeah.
Um, in July. July is Lynn's birthday. Lynn's gonna have a birthday.
Yeah, July 28th. Yeah. But July.
July 22nd is our next Lyn and Lori webinar. It is a Tuesday, July 22nd. So join us Tuesday, July 22nd for the next Lyn and Lori webinar. We have the next
Yes.
Flash Focus coming up on July 8th is the next Flash Focus, which is on visions.
Mhm.
Also, guys, for those of you who are in Club PRV, intermediate and advanced Club PRV, Wednesday and Thursday this week at 6 p.m., Lynn will be there with me. So if you're in the advanced, intermediate, or advanced Club PRV, you definitely want to join us for those meetings. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to be going over your projects, these actual real world remote viewing projects that you've been working on, and Lynn's going to be there. So I'd love to see you all.
Just to save myself an email here, uh, could you share more information about stage 18? No.
No, is right. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye, guys.